Hey warrior, welcome to today's video. Today's topic is talking about what if you binge during recovery? What does that mean? What should you do? And how do you handle it? It can be so emotionally difficult when you are in the mindset of recovery and you have been working towards that for days or for weeks or even for months. I know some people like to track their recovery days where they have not binged, and each day they give themselves a little check. There's a few apps that do this as well. I am actually on the skeptical side of this. I have found personally, as well as with my students, as well as with a lot of people I have discussed in the binge and emotional eating community, that this isn't the best practice that leads to success. The reason is because with each checked off day, this pressure to not binge grows a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And that pressure can be a great thing to help with recovery if it allows you to look back and say, I haven't binged for this many days in a row. And that gives me empowerment to get through this moment, this momentary urge where I am like hankering. I want to give in to this urge. It's a tough one. And you allow it to move you past it. But often what I find happens is that the people who do this do have a relapse, because it is so common in binging and recovery to have a relapse, regardless of if you're tracking or not. It's just kind of a part of the process, and it doesn't, we're going to learn today, determine if you're able to recover later or not. It really has no bearing on that. But because we've been tracking all this time, and we do relapse and we have a binge, it's this crushing, failing feeling of like, oh my gosh, I have to start from day one, and it can feel really defeating. The other people who have found they've tracked and they haven't let binges kind of defeat them over and over again mentally have sort of just stopped tracking after a while. They sort of just like forgot about it, and they continue to go on developing a healthy relationship with food, practicing unconditional permission to eat, and feeling really progressive about their recovery. And they haven't looked at any of their experiences going forward as a binge. And so their perception around how they're going to choose to look at in like overeating in a period of time is not this very shame-filled, emotionally filled, self-deprecating need to say, look what you did, you binged, you fell back a few steps. And they just change their perception of it and look at it like, I ate more than I felt comfortable eating. It didn't feel good in my body. I know that beating myself up emotionally isn't going to serve me. So next time I'm going to make sure that I do X, Y, and Z so that I can save myself from this physical discomfort. I know it's not going to hold me back. I know it doesn't mean anything about what I do next. And I know that if I learn from this and get right back on track, it's not going to affect any of my goals, including my weight loss goals. And then they go, and they kind of just let it go, and they step forward. So it doesn't drag on them, it doesn't weigh them down, metaphorically. So for those of you who do find that you track, please let me know in the comments, like, what do you think about it? Have you had success with it? Do you find it helps you or hurts you? I'd love to know. So moving on to today's topic, the first thing that I want you to recognize if you do binge during recovery is that it is an evidence of who you are. It is an evidence that you're powerless, and it is not evidence that you cannot recover. It just means that you acted on one binge urge. That's all it means. It doesn't mean anything for your future. You 100% can overcome this. You will overcome this. You're absolutely not back to square one because you have made so much progress since you have begun this journey, even 19 days ago. And the things that you have learned, you are taking with you and you are putting into practice. Recovery is not binary, meaning it's not you are recovering or you're not. It's not you binged or you didn't binge. It is measured in nuances. And we've discussed this before. So really understand that. You can learn and get stronger each time you have a relapse. In fact, I often discuss in the Warrior Evolution, my 6-month program to help end emotional eating, that recovery is a spiral. And we're spiraling up. But in a spiral up, we're inherently going to have to circle back a little bit lower before we go up again. And that's okay, because when we circle back down, we're learning something in that circling down that's going to help us continue to spiral up. So it's a good spiral. Getting upset, like we talked about in past videos, is just making this pathway stronger. So take a deep breath. Have a glass of water and recognize that this is just an isolated incident and move on. The second thing that I want you to recognize and do after you binge is this action means nothing about your ability to recover or how far away recovery is. Remember I said it's really your perception of how you are going to look at this overeating episode and what you are going to label it and what you are going to make a mark about yourself on it. These are just urges. They're automatic. We learned this in past videos from this session. They're just automatic urges from the primal survival part of the brain that has nothing to do with our personality, that has nothing to do with who we are as a human being. Our goals, our dreams do not come from this part of our brain. The part of us that we have, the higher part of our brain, the one that loves our family, the one that has love for ourselves, the one that wants to nourish ourselves, that has our passions, that fuels our fire, that is the true you. And you know that. This is just one little instance of the urge, and that urge comes from that primal part of the brain. So we have studied and understood these patterns on a very basic level. In the Warrior Evolution, we get into it a little bit more deeply, and not only do we learn about it, but we do specific exercises to start to break up these patterns that have formed and ingrained themselves in our brains, specifically in the primal part and the reward center, which cross pathways, so that we can start to break these. We know that we are safe, and if we need to remind ourselves of that, the next thing that we will do in this video is going to help us feel that. So the third thing that you are going to do after a binge is to ask yourself, what soul care nourishment do you need in this moment after that binge? How can you care for yourself? What does your soul need to feel nourished? We want to focus on nourishing ourselves in this present moment, not the before, not the after, but now. How often have you binged again after a binge? On my trigger list that I made when I was in recovery, having a binge the day before was an automatic trigger for me to binge again the following day or even later that day. And I had to work really hard on that trigger so that I could break that pattern. Nourishment is partnership with our body. And in this program, we are working on building trust and partnership based on communication with our body. So the more that you ask yourself, what do you need right now, self? And listen to what comes up, the quieter and the more calmed and soothed your survival mechanism, that part of the brain, the primal part of the brain that's sending out the alarm urges, is going to calm down, is going to be able to ground, and you'll be able to get into the part of the nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system, in which your heart rate comes down, Your blood pressure comes down. It is the opposite of fight or flight. We're grounded, we're more clear, and we're able to make decisions from the part of our brain that wants the best for us. It feeds us in many, many ways. This could look like needing a walk. This could look like taking a shower. This could look like having a glass of water. This could look like canceling the rest of what you have committed to that day so that you could pour in and nourish yourself. This could look like spending some time with your kids. This could look like handling one or two things that you need to responsibly for that day to have you feel just a little bit more accomplished for that day, and that you can feel like, okay, those things are under my belt and now I can relax mentally. Those are the things that I recommend in terms of soul care. So you have made your soul care lists, I think. Most of you have anyway, and if you haven't, go ahead and use this up as an opportunity to write down what would care for your soul, nourish your soul right in this moment, right now. Number 4, give yourself some grace and some compassion and allow yourself to forgive. Often a binge is followed by lots of shame, lots of self-criticism, lots of guilting ourselves into we must change. Look at what you did. This is not good enough. You said you were going to change, and it's this self-flagration, just beating ourselves up over and over again, and that is not going to get us anywhere. The best and most successful change that you will make and that will be sustainable will come from a place of acceptance and compassion, supporting and loving yourself where you're at. And where you're at is just after a binge, and that is an okay place to be. You're not bad for being there. You're not wrong for being there. It just is where you're at. If you can love yourself through this hard time where you're going to feel vulnerable and scared and all other sorts of things, you will be able to give yourself compassion along the way in the future as well. Being soft and gentle with yourself may feel really uncomfortable and not something you're used to. Maybe the way you learned to speak to yourself came from childhood or adults who spoke to you in a certain way, or you have just developed this habit over the years of criticizing instead of compassion and support. Something that I love to do in my program, and I'm going to invite you guys to do it here as well, is to write a letter to yourself. Writing a letter to the part of you that binged. Feel all the feels. Write out what comes up for you that you want to tell yourself, the part of you that binged. You can get it all out, and then you are going to move that letter towards a place of compassion and support, as if you were talking to your best friend who confessed that this is something that happened. And how would you speak with them? After this, or in addition to, or in place of this, but I invite you to do both, write a letter from the part of you that binged, the place inside of you that the binge urge came from, and tell yourself what it is that place needs. What is that binge urge really needing? And have that urge speak to you using a language that you understand. Write it out and see if you can get some insight into what that urge needs. Number 5 is similar but different. We're talking about self-care here. So I love to shift into a place of feeling grounded and empowered after a binge. There's nothing like reminding yourself that I'm in charge. I am the one that calls the shots. And even though I did this, this, and this 5 minutes ago, it doesn't determine what I do next. And I'm going to choose what I do next. And I'm going to make what I do next something that feels freaking amazing. Do something that is empowering. What do you need in this moment to show yourself that you are centered and empowered. Make it an action. I love movement, so generally I will just go out and I will go for a walk and I will clear my head and I will connect to nature and I'll breathe in fresh air, and that is empowering to me. Sometimes I clean. Sometimes I'll clean a part of my home. I'll clean and organize something, and that feels like taking my power back for me. I like to involve movement in mine. Sometimes I would go to a dance class, or I would go to a Muay Thai kickboxing class, because to me that was reminding myself I am in charge, I am strong, I am powerful, I'm a warrior, and I'm ready for what's next. Hello. Number 6, last thing. Process and learn what you can from this experience. Every opportunity that we have an experience with food, whether we deem it healthy or unhealthy, is an opportunity to learn something about ourselves. Learn what works, learn what didn't work, learn how we can help ourselves, learn what we truly need. So get a clear objective and remove that subjective emotional response, okay? So really make sure that you're coming at this with an objective mindset, like I said, that perception shift. What can I learn from this that I can then take into the future to help myself in a future similar situation? What triggered me? What can I learn about my urge? What did it sound like? What did it feel like? Was I taking care of myself in the hours or the days leading up to this urge? Or was I kind of ignoring what my body was telling me, whether it was rest or movement or leisure or something? Listen, what comes up? Did I eat enough? Was I nourishing myself before and the day before leading up to this binge? Looking backwards and working backwards can reveal so many answers about you to yourself. And that's really the only reason why we look back, is to learn. And we take what we can learn and we bring it forward and we leave the rest in the past, because that's where it was. When did you decide that you were going to binge? When was it that the urge went from just an emotional, discomforting feeling into a decision that I am going to binge? When did you decide that? There was a point. You may not have been completely conscious during it or aware, but try and think back and learn when you made that decision. Where might along this time beforehand may you have had other choices where the binge may not have been your last resort choice? Where might you have had other choices? And what can you see from this hindsight perspective that you weren't able to see from the urge? And as we always say, make a decision about what you are going to do moving forward. And ask yourself, what's next? Because you are ready for what's next. You decide that you're ready for what's next. You empower yourself, you get clear, you choose to move forward and focus on what's next. I would love to hear which of these steps today spoke to you the most, which ones you're going to try, and definitely make sure, if you have not already, download the free guide to nighttime overeating. The link is below in the description, and you still have a few days to save $300 off of my program, The Warrior Evolution. It's a 6-month group coaching program where we literally take you step by step by step, using videos, using workouts, using group calls, using one-on-one calls. There's so much available to you in this program. It is chock full of hours and hours and hours of information, exercises, like literally breaking down what it is that has been holding you back in your recovery from emotional and binge eating specifically. It's really powerful, and this is a phenomenal deal. So please check that out if you're interested. You can always email me and ask me any questions. I'm available to speak. I will see you tomorrow in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.